G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic Friday. I hope you've had a great week. I hope you're leading into an even better weekend. Now, I missed any updates yesterday, both news and maps, so we'll be looking over all of that. So of course we have a fair bit to go over, but the main bits of today we're going to talk about is a new weapon system that we've seen used for the first time on the front line and all the auxiliaries around that, everything from chips, the psychological effect, and how important this is on the maps. Talking about maps, of course we'll look at the maps and we'll update over the past 48 hours and see what is changing and why some areas are being attacked and why others aren't, as I've been thinking about one area in particular a lot and why there may be a push here. We need to talk about Patriots. Ukraine's getting a lot more for Patriot as well as a whole new system, and we know that is linking in with the F-16s that should be arriving. Well, we don't know when. We've heard weeks, we've heard months, we've heard years, but news today is saying that they'll be in summer, which is basically now, so we'll speak at length about that. And of course, we need to look at some other strikes that have taken place in Russia and against some other equipment in occupied territory as well. So we'll look over all of that. But where I want to start is this new weapon system. Now, you're all familiar with the FAB glide bombs, particularly the FAB 500 of what we're seeing used a lot, and that Russia has improved the use of both accuracy and time on target a lot over the past months we've seen this used. So this is your FAB 500s here. Now, these are dropping then 4 of these in location in succession here. Now, you can see on a lot of other videos of these, you can see dropping, say, linear down a tree line, things like this, and that gives us an idea of the accuracy improved on this. Now, we have seen that's a 500. Now we've seen then a FAB 3000. Something to remember when we're talking about munitions is there is a law of diminishing returns. A FAB 3000 doesn't then necessarily mean that it is 6 times more powerful. 1 kilogram of TNT compared to 10 does not mean that you get 10 times the amount of effect on target. You'll see this with the grenade. A grenade has about a 6-meter kill radius depending on the grenade, and something like this will have about 230 meters. The law of diminishing returns. But firstly, let's look at where this is, why this is important, and what the overall outcome on target was. So let's have a look. We've got this building, we've got these other little buildings around here, and this is in Lipsy in the Kharkiv Oblast. It's right here. Then this drops right about where my cursor is where this then hits. We zoom right out and we see, okay, this is where Kharkiv is, and then we'll go to the border of Russia and Ukraine, then about 12 kilometers behind. So one thing we presume with this is that these will have less of a glide range than the lighter variants. It's physics. I don't make the rules, but let's have a look at this. So we can see overhead drone here. There's a bit of a countdown. You can watch the full footage on Telegram if you'd like. About right here is where we want to be looking, where my cursor is. And then we'll see then the FAB 3000 then impact here. Now, some are saying that this missed. Okay, that is presuming that it was going for this main building, which I would say it probably is as well. But I think in this, a lot of people aren't taking into account how much of a blast a FAB 3000, a bomb of this size, actually is. Now, that doesn't mean there's 3,000 kilograms explosive in this. I believe it's a bit over 1,000. But you can see that these surrounding areas have been absolutely obliterated. But what people don't take into account in this is a lot of it is what is the primary blast. Now, what if you caught in that fireball of the blast? I'm pretty used to watching movies about this. You don't take into account fragmentation, shrapnel, and there's 2 types of shrapnel. You've got primary and secondary frag. So you've got your primary, which is bits of the bomb hitting you, but then you've got secondary, which is, okay, this has hit concrete areas. There's going to be bits of concrete, there's going to be bitumen, there's going to be bits of car, there's bits of rebar, and that will fly out as well in significantly more numerous than the bomb itself. But as well as the overpressure shockwave of something like this, even if you're, say, from the shrapnel and the blast itself, the shockwave that can go through, the barotrauma it's called, absolutely can be fatal because you are just a big jelly sack full of organs. So the damage to all surrounding areas here is massive. Even just think of your hearing. If you are, permanently deafened by something like this, your combat effectiveness drops, and you can see how effect that this had. Now, why would Russia use something like a 3000 here instead of a 500? Well, we believe these are still in testing to see how it goes, but as well, bigger bomb. If you've got a bunker or something, you'll drop a larger explosive to try and push through something like this. Now, let's have a look at the specs that a Russian blogger fighter bomber puts out then on this. So the continuous damage for the F3000 is 230 meters. Fragments retain the destructive power at a range of 1240 meters. I'd say this is minimum given my limited knowledge in explosives, but something heading out like this. You can throw there is one bomb, for example, you can throw 10 of them. Now, people have been asking, due to the weight, what dropped this? Some people have been asking, was it more of Russia's long-range supersonic bombers, TU-style aircraft? Now, I don't know if Russia would want to risk a bomber like those that aren't in production anymore this close to the front line. I think they will be more saved for your long-range like cruise missiles. I would still say it's a Su-34 dropping this. I could be incorrect, but a Su-34 can carry at least open source up just over 7,000 kilograms. And of course, 3,000 gives you a name of this. So I'd still say it's probably one of these then dropping them. But these are a hell of a bang. And it's not to be underestimated the psychological effect weapons like this can have. And the guys I talked on the front line have compared weapons, the Fabs, to like the sirens on a Stuka bomber for the German fighters in World War II, for just the psychological effect of knowing that these are operating in the area, hearing them over the top. And that was what they were talking about when they were down around the Bakhmut. But then these were going into Kramatorsk. They'd hear them over the top. It was having a psychological effect. Now, this, I believe, originally rolls from the Kiev Independent, and they talk about this. They contain a lot more explosive, particularly the 1,500 kilogram variants, than artillery or rocket artillery shells. A hell of a lot more. Because of this, there's a quantitative psychological impact that is greater in many ways than artillery. And we know that morale, that psychological effect, that is, of course, not to be underestimated, and how important that is on the front line to maintain that high morale motivation. And this, of course, these bombs coming into the play can massively affect that. Now, people did this miss, did it not? Yeah, probably. It might have been 10 or 15 meters off. A bomb this big, I don't know if that matters that much, and this is going for something very specific, but we do presume this is still within the testing phase. Now, people have asked, well, are they doing this on one larger one instead of having 500 kilograms? Are they doing that because of chip shortage? And well, I want to talk about the chips in just a minute, but I want to stay on, because a PhD who has been on this channel a little bit has reached out and spoken to me about chip shortages and maybe some myths around this. But I want to talk on that psychological effect. Now, I'm not going to show you the maps up here yet. I'm just dipping my toe in the water and teasing you. But Vovchansk. Now, this was an area of where Russia walked across, then these defensive works in here, and now particularly in Vovchansk, I know History Legend stays comparing this to like Stalingrad, of the amount of just fighting happening in here after Russia was able to come into here fairly easily. Now, I was thinking too literally about doctrine. Why is Ukraine pouring guys back into here to try and retake these positions over the whole war? This little bits of ground up here isn't that important if you're trying to clear all of this. You're better off digging in on defensive lines, reinforcing what defensive lines existed, and not letting this go any further, rather than trying to fight that back through due to Ukraine hasn't fully mobilized, so they have a manpower shortage and still have artillery shortages. They're not reaching the front line. Why does it make sense to push back through here? But I was then thinking about this in bed last night, of the guys I speak to, and I speak to a lot of guys, they always point at what happened in the north here affecting morale and motivation on other areas of the front line more than anywhere else, because we know Russia was able to get a number of villages and towns in here very easily due directly to incompetence and corruption, and that this has had more of a morale and motivation effect here. The failures on the Ukrainian side, not the successes of Russia, but the failures of the defensive works and everything up here has affected morale and motivation in other areas. And I believe the reason Ukraine's pushing so hard to push the Russians back in here is probably due to that. To fix that, we need to plug this whole fix motivation and morale on other areas, because if it was really easy to push them back in here, well, Ukraine's been having a lot of assets pushing the Russians back in this area now and have, at least by this map, not really showing much advancement on deep state, but we will talk about some other maps as well. So that was more what I was thinking. Is it more to try and have a psychological boost on other areas of, yeah, but we plugged that hole and people forget about the failures of the defensive works and the commanders in here for letting this then happen. That's at least my mind. Maybe I was looking at this too tactically instead of overall strategic morale psychologically. I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect. But before we have a look then at maps here, I want to then line up with the fabs and then the chips. Now, this guy, he's been on this before talking about the Tornado circuit boards and whatever. And I will say that I have no idea about electronics. I can barely use a bloody Word document. I was trying to fill out a form last night on Adobe, whatever it was, and no, Acrobat, whatever it was, useless. My girlfriend helped me. But this is very interesting. I'm now watching an interview with the Polish soldier. I stumbled upon his claim that Russians stripped chips off laptops to use in cruise missiles. I'm sorry, but that is impossible. First, I'll explain where I think the urban myth originated and why it's possible. Remember, this guy's a PhD directly in this and has worked in some undisclosed military companies as well. The reason behind this myth is the belief that the chips used in military equipment is state-of-the-art equipment. This is as incorrect as it gets. Almost all military equipment use 90 nanometer or 45 nanometer chips. These technologies are called mature node technologies because they are old and reliable. Mature 90 nanometers serial production happened in 2003, 45 in 2007. Smaller architectures have higher speed and lower power consumption, but you need neither of them in almost all military equipment. But as a trade-off, they introduce new factors, the likes of which you don't want in your military equipment. I can go into more detail about this, and if you're interested, we can. No laptop produced in the last 10 years uses 45 nanometer technology because laptops have RISC architecture and they need more speed. So they're using better, more modern chips. So many of the Russian weapons use chips developed in the early 2000s, and they are mass-produced in many countries, including Russia and China. And why is it impossible? Well, not impossible, but very impractical. This is referring to stripping the chips. You can't desolder chips en masse. You can have heat all pins at the same time, and you can actually damage the chip in the processes. If you ever tried to desolder something, you would know. So talking about that, but let's talk about the chips and why this may be more of a less of an effect on than the sanctions than some of us believe. I'm not sure what you refer to when you say chip shortage. There was a global chip shortage following the start of the pandemic due to an unexpected surge in demand, but that's largely over. Do you ask whether Western countries, including Japan, South Korea, ROC, can starve Russia of chips so that Russia can't produce any weaponry, or so that Russia have to resort to production of older weapons? If so, I also don't think that this is possible. Western domination of the chip market is limited to chips of smaller size. They can have a collective monopoly over sub-15 nanometer architectures and a good grasp of the sub-30 nanometers market. But these chips are not used in weaponry. Even if Russia hits production capacity, China can produce them. Heck, if they order these chips through intermediaries, even the US might be producing them. You can't tell if a chip is for military or civilian use just by checking the design. So remember back here when he has said that they are old and reliable, what ones are specifically being used, but that Russia and China can produce these chips that were state-of-the-art in the early 2000s. I thought Russia might lack some modern sensors, but I haven't seen a drop in accuracy or the general quality of the Russian weapons to suggest Russia lacks any electronic components. If we had this war in 2008, Russia would have starved for the civilian communications electronics. Only 3 companies produced the chips used in 3, 4, and 5G base stations, all of these, and Huawei. If this war happened before the emergence of Huawei, Russia might have been in deep trouble. Right now, the only parts they can't get easily are for civil aviation, but that's not my area of expertise. When I say I don't think impractical or I don't expect, I generally mean impossible. Science and engineering have different jargon that prohibits saying impossible or bullshit, or are you out of your mind, you uneducated swine? So the scientists and engineers, that hopefully the Western countries consulted before imposing these sanctions probably used these words in their reports, and policymakers, unknowing what these people meant, thought that they are shutting off a possible, albeit small, opportunity for Russian weapon manufacturers. The truth is that these sanctions only hurt Russia for, or at most, 2 months, in which they revamped their supply chain and made small adjustments to their chip designs. After that, the electronics component sanctions wouldn't have had much of an impact whatsoever. So I will say I'm definitely not the one to know all of this, but he's saying that the older chips, which Russia and China can produce, they're the ones mostly used in weapon systems anyway. Cutting off access to those really high-end chips, yes, it may have an effect on some really high-end weapons, some communications, maybe some thermal, some of that like state-of-the-art stuff. But for things like your Fab glide bombs that I presume you're using very basic chips, it's not going to have as much of an effect, which is, if we look at, has there been a huge effect on these systems being used or updated, and we'll look at, and I scan in a bit, we haven't really seen that. Now, some will say it's just coming into effect. Now, I got sent this across from one of my guys as well. Apparently, this is Russian troops using a Chinese monitor from Solgud to hack into a Ukrainian drone feed. Now, this is interesting as well. I can't back up whether this is legit or not, but it's said to be this thing here, using by the Russians from a Chinese company here, for drones, and then hacking in and actually looking at, as they walk around, into a Ukrainian drone feed here, which you could imagine for all sorts of ISR problems could have huge effects. Again, I can't back up all of this. Now, what do we want to look at next? Some of you are here for the maps, some of you are here for footage. I don't know. Let's look at maps. Now, we'll look up in the north, but of course, here is Ukraine in the center, the capital of Kyiv. Red areas occupied since 22, purple since 14. The green areas of which Russia has been and has either been pushed out or withdrawn. New areas are like in a red check. So let's come up into the north. Now, we haven't seen any change on this map for a long period of time. It's still showing this disconnect between two Russian-occupied areas in here. Some are still maintaining that there's 400 Russian troops in here. Others are calling that may be impossible or that's not happening. Others like Forbes are saying that Russians are completely surrounded in here. Just looking by this, complete surround would look like this. Strategic surround is different, but regardless, no changes on this map, and we don't exactly know how this looks. Now, we do have a number of updates in here, and one of the things we are seeing a lot of is Russia entrenching works around the border, but on the Ukrainian side. We get this from Ukrainian drone footage hitting some of these excavating vehicles here, digging in trenches in multiple areas. We have seen Ukrainian troops enter into some of these positions as well. Now, let's have a look at how these maps have updated. So this was on day 844. Now, this is on the western side, in Lipsy. You can see that Russia has been pushed back here. Ukraine had an advancement, as well as in the center of Vovchansk here as well. You can see where then Ukraine has had a successful push and Russia has made some little bits of ground here. Now, let's just read this. Kharkiv axis. During the last 10 days, Ukraine army managed to completely recapture control of the dashes north of Lipsy. Of course, this is relating to the top map. From Chuv axis, the situation has hardly changed in Vovchansk, where the fighting between Russian and Ukrainian armies continues around the aggregate plant and high-rise buildings. Now, remember, these maps, they're not showing this dislocation of these two areas here that some maps are then showing. During these days, there was also talk about the start of a new Russian operation in Sumy Oblast. However, there is nothing certain about it. Russian troops took photos of the abandoned border facility locality here. We saw those photos in the same way as Ukrainian-backed Russian militia did in the first weeks of March, that crossing back into Russia. Simply propaganda motives with no impact on the battlefield. Even so, it is not excluded from the future they will start new operations in this oblast, as they have stated as they have started in the north of Kharkiv. So could Russia open another area along here? We know that is a possibility. We don't know if it will really happen. Now, Lipsy, this is the area where that Fab 3000 was then dropped. Let's have a look here. Kharkiv axis, Ukrainian army continued counterattacks, re-entered the center of Holoboki from the west. So up in Holoboki here, have re-entered some areas in here as well. So Ukraine is having success pushing back into here, but that does mean there's been an allocation of many assets into this area as well. Now, we'll look at Vovchansk again. We have a couple of maps here. We won't look over all of them. So this was on day, let me have a look, 846, and then we jump, I think this is 848. Yes, we can see that Ukraine has maintained these positions of which they've pushed back and have pushed into some other areas as well, recaptured some positions east of Vovchansk town. So we know Ukraine is definitely committed to try and push through and recapture Vovchansk. Now, like I said, the doctrine around attritional warfare at this point in time for Ukraine would mean to sit in defense, hold positions, don't let Russia get any more around here. But I didn't take into account maybe the psychological effect that this is having on other areas and the optics that could be blurring vision here too. Now, why is particularly Lipsy here very, very important? We'll look at some topographical maps on then this western push into Kharkiv. So if we have a look here, that's where that was bombed. This is Lipsy down here on this high ground, down into Kharkiv. And you can actually see from some areas in Lipsy as well, you can see then Kharkiv itself line of sight. So this is what we presume Russia was most likely trying to push for, was down in here to then get a line of sight down in here. That's if this was ever to try and capture Kharkiv or have more of a run, rather than actually just pull troops away from the east to then have success there, which I think is just as, if not more likely, the case of what Russia was trying to do here, as we just don't think there was ever enough troops put in here to actually try something like Kharkiv, but try and withdraw troops, which has looked like it has then worked. Now, we're going to go on to the maps, and we need to have a look at a few different areas. Now, the only change, this was actually yesterday, we see down in here, if this will then load for me, was this Russian advancement out here just to the south of Makivka, but this is in sort of this area around Borova. Now, Borova is where the 3rd Assault Battalion Azov was talking that Russia has amounted a lot of troops and potentially are trying to push out to here, but no changes yet on this front. All we're seeing is this change. That was the only change then yesterday. So let's just go south of here a little bit. We have then this Seversk front in here that hasn't really seen much change. We'll come down into Rozdelivka, which we have seen some changes from Vesely, this area, fairly recently. Now let's have a look on what Suryak is saying. Now, of course, this is the train line running through here. This blue dot is Rozdelivka. So it's saying that Russia has just pushed down the train line in this area here, not being shown across the two maps, but these aren't too different, except the grey zone here is basically where Suryak is showing where the Russians are up to, just on the outskirts of Rozdelivka then itself. Now, we will talk then about, of course, Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar area, some advancements, some withdrawals. All of this in this area has been happening. It's hard to know exactly what is happening. Up in Kalinivka, just here, we did see that Ukraine did actually have a pushback of the Russians here, but according to Suryak then yesterday, it does look like during the last 36 hours, Russian army managed to re-enter the center of Kalinina, in this Kalinivka, where then the Ukrainian forces had pushed them back. But as far as Chasiv Yar, this area, it is very slow-going urban fighting, as well as to cross these waterways is going to be incredibly costly, but supply over this waterway is going to be very difficult for Ukraine as well. And if and when Russia get over it, it's going to be hard to supply the other way as well. Things like that are a pain in the ass. We will come back to Avdiivka in a second, but I just want to go then to this sort of New York front in here. Now, many are pointing that this area is building up to then be another envelopment at this point. I just don't. So this is Avdiivka, this is Bakhmut. At this point, that isn't under threat. In the future, could it be if areas like this intersection fall and the supply route down into here affected? Potentially, but you'd need a lot more push through Chasiv Yar. But we did see this advancement a couple of days ago, just out from here by then the Russian forces, and this is confirmed today then by Suryak in basically the exact same area. The reason we said this is important is a lot of these areas have been built up, fortified for 10 years, right on the border of what you'll see as purple on this map, heading into Toretsk here as well, and what pressures that puts on other areas. Now, let's step forward till then. Today, we'll push down Madiinka here. No changes shown on this map, but Changes shown on today's map by Suryak. Now we can see, if you line up where these two reservoirs are here and these paddocks, of course this is Horovka. So what Suryak is showing is basically that Russia controlled the grey zone of what Ukraine, the deep state map, is showing on this map, including then this paddock just here. So again, we will see, wait and see what is happening on these maps. Now we'll come down into this sort of, I'll call it this southern corner, I guess, around Ugledar, between it turns from the southern front to then the eastern front here. Now we have seen some changes in here over the past week, and then today Suryak is no different to this. We can see where this area is just here, and you'll also see where this road turns. This is the road heading through here. That Russia has filled in some gap on some of these fields in here, small area there, but an area of which we haven't seen moving for a while. So if there's an area that hasn't moved for a time and then it starts moving, that is worth reporting on too. Now we'll come up to today. The only change you see on this whole map is just a very small grey zone shift here around Sokil as well, out from sort of the west of Osheretny as well, but no real major shifts. We do have another Ukrainian map to show you in here then too. So we'll do, let's update over the past few days that we missed. So up in the north of this area, we have seen that Suryak is showing this area has been closed up just to the north of this is Osheretny, so closing up this area, but this is showing the same as the deep state, as well as a push just to the north. This is Sokil, so this is being shown basically the same. Now we can confirm then these movements. Now we zoom out a much further and you can see, let's do this, see where these reservoirs are to line yourself up, that this push to the south of Ulmansky, this is still shown as grey zone, further near Sokil, as well as a more push in the north heading across where then this reservoir is, and this area there then closing itself up. Now let's look at some today's maps. This is another Ukrainian map here. This is from Mr. Noel Reports. Now let's look at where this reservoir is, as well as this area of which I'm not going to try and pronounce, and he is showing that this is coming up to throughout this town, basically coming under full control, but not showing to the northern push that the deep state map itself, or to the south that we know the deep state is tied in with the MOD, but he's showing that Russia made some movements there. It may be updating on this. Now the only map change we have in here today, remember we're catching up, is near Netelyove, this Nevelsky front. This is a very important area, as these open areas could fall fairly quickly. Let's get rid of that. And then we see this one just here. So we're looking at this southern reservoir just on the top of it, just here, heading then through into Kharkivka, and this expansion of control here. And I still ask about the Ukrainian forces that are remaining in here, about the withdrawal elements of where they can go out, where is an effective crossing here, and or through this area as well. They are questions to be asked, and questions of which we may get the answer to if this continues moving on this front line. What we know is Ukraine need air defense. There's been the thing asked for the most by Zelensky throughout the entire last, say, 12 months. And part of this is the F-16s. We've been waiting on the F-16s. There's been a lot of allegations thrown by Ukraine at the US for purposely delaying these. But at a military base in the rural south of the Netherlands, General Arnold Stolman, a Dutch Air Force commander, said expected at some point this summer. So around this summertime, it is all lining up for the F-16s to be in the sky over Ukraine. And that is a lot earlier than some of the messaging has been recently, but a lot later than some of the other messaging. So F-16, once we see them in the sky, that's when they're there. But I wouldn't say hold your breath on anything at the moment, because we were told months ago, then we were told that there's only 8 pilots being trained in the US. US is delaying it. So this year we may see them, but I'm not sure. But what we do know is when these F-16s come in, there's going to need to be a lot of air defense put around wherever these areas are, because the last thing that everyone wants in this is F-16s to being destroyed then on the ground. Now, Romania has made a decision to transfer one more Patriot system to Ukraine. This was announced by Zelensky only 6 hours ago. But the big news of this from then Financial Times is the US to redirect Patriot air defense orders to Ukraine. The US government is set to hold all open orders for Patriot air defense systems and interceptor missiles until Ukraine has enough to defend itself from Russia's air attacks. One thing that could change in this is if Israel then go into Lebanon to fight, the change that may happen for the amount of missiles coming in and how quickly Patriots may be getting used up both in Ukraine and Israel as well. That's the spanner in the works here, but we know that this is for two reasons. One, Russia keep firing missiles in, but secondly, this is to then protect these F-16s at then the base as well. Now let's have a look at some strikes. Now talking of missiles, Patriot systems, we look overnight that this is Ukrainian claim that all of the KH-101 cruise missiles were shot down. 0 of the Iskanders have been hit. 1 of the KH-59s and all of the drones that went in overnight were shot down. We can't confirm this, but we can see where some of these systems were then firing. So some in Dnipro, some at Zap, as well as Kyiv itself, and where the majority of the drones were going to. So it is interesting to look at what has been hit, what may have been hit. We don't know. I know people throw these figures around on both sides, but the truth is we just have no idea. Ukraine has it absolutely locked down for any footage of these being hit on target or anything. So we just cannot confirm any of that, but that Russia is having some success with these still getting through for sure, as we can see here, but we don't know exactly what is being hit. What we're seeing a lot of is out around here. We're seeing that's where a majority of these are being fired on other days, aiming for, we presume, the airbase of which then the F-16s will be based at. Are some of them there yet? We don't know. Are they doing updates to that runway facilities there? Potentially. Those that say, well, the F-16 just work on highways, it doesn't work like that. Yes, they can land and take off on runways. Yes, Switzerland have some tunnels of which then they can maintain and whatever. One, Switzerland highways, Swiss highways, very different to the highways in Ukraine overall. But as well, that these require a lot of maintenance, a lot of man hours in maintenance, refueling, rearmament, and you can't just do that at any highway you see fit. You still need areas to maintain them, you need areas to store them, and you need areas in which the plane is close to hardened protection for the pilots if they're called up to scramble as well. Now, we have seen an oil storage facility here still on fire and has been attacked by a Ukrainian drone, so we see it is right here, and you can see that this is a long way away from Ukraine. So we come just to the Kharkiv Oblast here. We're talking about 400 kilometers away that is on fire and very hard to both extinguish there too. Now, there's been claims of another HIMARS system has been struck then by an Iskander missile. Now, this goes into what we were speaking about before, that the kill chain does seem to be vastly improved on the Russian side between seeing something with a drone like this and then actually striking it. So this vehicle here is like a support vehicle, they're saying, and they're saying that the HIMARS is back in here. Now, as well, this isn't like conclusive proof that this is what was hit. There's a lot of cuts in this video. There's a lot of different areas it's traveling. So, look, with this footage, you got to put it, if you're going to put it if you're going to require evidence one way, you require evidence the other way. And both sides turn up blind eye to when their side has no evidence but a large claim, if that makes sense. But I'm not willing to say what this is or wasn't, but what we can get out of this is the use of an Iskander, the use of drone in tandem, and is it laser designating, which is one of the big questions that PhD in a couple of videos back reached out and said that this could be done looking for some of the components inside an Iskander that he has seen. So that's just very interesting to look at. Legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. Look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.